and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Happy New Year. Welcome to Gay USA. It's Andy Hum.
And Ann Northrup.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us for our shows the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
The roundtables, we got a lot of good response to that, which indicates to me people would rather hear from other people and not just us. But we've always known that. But we really appreciate your comments about the shows, the Stonewall 50 roundtable and the Lesbian AIDS Activist Roundtable. And I must thank Jean Carla Musto, who supplied the footage of the ACT UP women at Shea Stadium with the big banners in the bleachers. That was just magnificent footage. And it's from her movie Sex in an Epidemic. And she was very kind to let us use that. Thank you, Jean.
So we haven't done a news show for the last couple of weeks, so let's bring you up to date. We don't know if impeachment proceedings have started already, but Democrats have taken the House by the time you're seeing this, taking control. But how did President Trump celebrate the new year? By going after service members with HIV.
Not pretty. But perhaps in reaction to that and other things, a Kansas Republican state senator spent the holidays quitting the Republican Party over its anti-transgender policies.
I learned that the person next in line to be mayor of New York City now is an out gay man.
I think we all learned that, but we'll give you the details. Courts have put limits on the ability of religious institutions to discriminate with impunity.
We had a win for retroactive gay marriage in Colorado.
Does that mean I am married if I went to high school there?
It depends on what you did there.
I don't think I got married. The new Rose Queen, who led the Rose Parade in Pasadena, is a bunch of firsts, including LGBT.
Madonna has opened 2019 at the Stonewall bar, marking the 50th anniversary of the rebellion.
Cuba has caved to evangelicals on same-sex marriage.
But LGBT rights advanced in Costa Rica.
The oldest person living with HIV is turning 100 years old.
And I'm going to give you my reviews of London theater, which is what I was doing over the last couple of weeks, including the gayest show on the planet.
But we start, as we did all last year, with our president.
Well, I mean, so disgusting and dispiriting over the holidays, especially, to read that they're taking time out to send discharge motions to healthy service members living with HIV, calling them medically unfit. Well, Lambda and Service Members Legal Defense Network are suing, but it's just disgusting.
They're suing on behalf of 2 members of the military who have been discharged because they're HIV positive. Now, these 2 people have passed every fitness test, are supported by their commanders, and yet are being tossed out. The deal is that they're called undeployable.
Right, we can't put you anywhere in the world. You might need certain medications and treatments. We can't do that.
But they have defined undeployable as being HIV positive.
Yes.
It's not that because they're HIV positive, they're undeployable. And how about everybody else in the military who has various issues medically and is taking various medication? It's just insane. It's just utter rank bigotry and ignorance.
And they're at, as we've told you, they're at the Supreme Court trying to get their trans ban to go into effect, going to directly to the Supreme Court.
For service in the military.
Right. And now advocates went to the Supreme Court this past Friday to say, don't take this case now. Let it play out.
Yes, because the Trump administration wants to expedite the cases to the Supreme Court. There are 4 cases, I think, going at the moment.
Because there's an emergency.
Yeah.
We're about to start a war, I guess.
And we're saying, hey, slow it down. It hasn't been through all the levels of the courts. And by the way, every court it does go to, your stupid proposed ban on trans people serving in the military gets knocked down. And the only reason you want to go to the Supreme Court is because you think you've got 5 votes there for this. And don't be so sure of yourself. And meanwhile, Mattis is out as the Secretary of Defense, and he, for a while anyway, there was the biggest supporter of trans people serving in the military.
Right.
I think one of the reasons he left was that he just couldn't stand up to them anymore. I hope he will speak out.
But they did get a positive decision from that Texas judge about Obamacare, but even that, to strike it down.
The Trump people did, not us.
Yes. But to strike it down. But even that Texas judge, who's very horrible, did put a stay on his own order until it works its way through the courts.
Shocking, because this is a guy...
Well, we were going to appeal elsewhere.
Well, sure, but this is a guy who they go to with every case like this. They just have this one federal judge in Texas. We've talked about him before
how do they
cases.
get the judge that they want all the time? How does that work? I know you can go to a certain circuit, but I didn't know you could pick the judge.
Well, they can. And there he is, and that's what they're doing.
Since we last saw you, the evil Mike Mulvaney is the new chief of staff. And nobody is home.
He is a big homophobe, and he believes that to support LGBT people is religious persecution of the so-called religious anti-LGBT.
And of course, everybody was talking this week about Mitt Romney's op-ed going after Trump. But of course, he did bring up things like, I'm going to call him out on divisiveness and racism and sexism and anti-immigrant. And he didn't mention us.
He did not. By the way, Mulvaney, while he still is the head of the Office of Management and Budget.
And the consumer agency.
Yes, but he proposed big cuts to the HIV budget at OMB. And as long as you're talking about Romney, let's go to another Utah stalwart, Senator Mike Lee, who is now trying to block the reappointment of out lesbian genius hero Hy Feldblum to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. This
is a Trump appointment because he has to appoint some Democrats.
Yes.
So he's trying to keep her on. Why not?
And why does Mike Lee think she should not be on the EEOC? Because she is a threat to the family.
But he's quoting her from some stories that Maggie Gallagher wrote, misquoting her, which has been acknowledged, but he does this anyway.
Now, our newest senator is from Arizona, Martha Mcsalley, who is appointed to fill the position left vacant by the death of John McCain.
Yes. There was an interim, Kyle.
Yes.
And now they have her. And she was, of course, Mcsalley was beaten by out bisexual Kristen Sinema in the election. Didn't make a big deal about it because she was
for Flake seat.
So she's got the appointment now. She doesn't like us.
No, she doesn't. And she got a lot of positive press when she lost to Sinema because she did that little home video with the dog and said, I hope Kirsten Sinema, whatever her name is successful in the Senate.
Senator Sinema.
Thank you. I don't mean to be dismissive.
No.
I'm happy she won. But everyone thought, Mcsalley, isn't she a nice person? No, she is not a nice person. She is very opposed to trans people serving in the military. She's very opposed to Obamacare. She is a hardcore right-winger, and that's who's going to be in the Senate from Arizona.
Former Trump consort Stormy Daniels is sticking up for us. She canceled a gig at a Miami club, Goldfinger, after the owner called her assistant an effing faggot. She said, that kind of abuse will not be tolerated. How is it that people seeing my breasts, she didn't use that word, is more important than hate speech?
Thank you, Stormy. I appreciate that. So the first, technically the first, but the first major Democratic candidate hitting the road is Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts.
There she is at the Victory Fund.
Yeah, she was, the Victory Fund named her the 2018 Ally of the Year.
Wow.
She is a big proponent of the Equality Act. She is for including us in education.
Look, she's terrific. I mean, I don't
trans
have a
rights,
I don't have a candidate.
anti-Trump.
There's so many people running, but she will add a lot of substance to the debates. There's a lot.
Yes.
Nothing's going to get past her, and she's going to add a lot to this to the mix.
Well, I think as we have seen her in the Senate and seen all the attacks by Trump and all the Pocahontas stuff and everything, we've forgotten what a true blue advocate she was for the middle class, for the poor, for
Against the
consumer
banks.
rights, against the banks, and that really was how she got into all this. And she is a good person.
So Betsy DeVos's Federal Commission on School Safety has recommended rescinding non-discriminatory school discipline guidance protecting students of color.
Charming.
Not just that, we're not the only ones they're going after. Of course, there are many LGBT people of color.
Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives are going to intro a plan for U.S. support of LGBT people globally, because, of course, Pompeo's State Department has kind of forgotten how to do that.
Now, great news from Kansas, where State Senator Barbara Bollier quit the Republican Party, and she said it was over their anti-trans language. This was the final straw. Last straw. Their platform says, we oppose all efforts to validate transgender identity. We believe God created two genders, male and female. A political party taking the stance.
That surprises you? Have you read the Texas Republican platform lately?
She says Trump doesn't represent her value system remotely. She supported a lot of Democrats in the last election, so she was inching out. And by the way, in Kansas, Mission, Kansas passed an LGBT ordinance, as did Prairie Village, Kansas.
Governors in the news, starting with Connecticut, where retiring Governor Dannel Malloy had his official portrait unveiled. And what do we see in the lower left-hand corner there?
3 flags.
Including a rainbow flag.
And he said he wanted to emphasize the accomplishments of his administration for the LGBT community, and he put it in his official portrait.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, in Ohio, you might have thought that retiring Governor John Kasich was a good guy for issuing an executive order that added gender identity and expression to a non-discrimination rule for state employees. However, that executive order expires at the end of his term on January 14th.
So if you make a complaint before that, will they still adjudicate it?
I have no answer to that. And he also was, I don't know, they were fooling around with abortion in Ohio too, but I don't know the details. But in, not governor, but attorney general in Illinois, Attorney General Lisa Madigan says that the Catholic Church withheld the names of 500 abusive priests. 500. It turns out that there are now about a dozen states investigating their local Catholic church.
It's the new thing.
Well, ever since the Pennsylvania report, that got a lot of people stirred up, so there's more action.
Yes. In New York,
Yeah.
the person who is now next in line to be mayor of New York at this moment is an out gay man, our own Cory Johnson. There he is, flying during a pride march.
And by our own, we of course mean Gay USA, since he has co-hosted here more than once.
Because Tish James was the public advocate, she became attorney general, and we didn't know this, the Speaker of the Council becomes the acting public advocate until February 26th. He is the first out public advocate. Out Danny O'Donnell is running for the job, and there's a whole bunch of people running for public advocate. We have a picture of a whole bunch of them.
Let me just to make sure we're clear. Cory Johnson is the Speaker of the City Council.
Yes.
Because the public advocate job is now vacant for a couple of months since Tish James moved on to Attorney General of New York.
Put that picture back up. She's in the corner there.
Yeah.
She's our new Attorney General.
On the upper left. She's no longer the public advocate, so Cory
Everybody
fills
else there
in.
is running.
Cory, let me finish
All
this.
right.
Cory fills in
Keep the picture up.
as acting public advocate, and then one of these people who are running for public advocate will take over.
And I know a lot of these folks, but we especially know the out candidate, who was the second from the bottom left, and that's Danny O'Donnell, who is running. And you went to his announcement where his sister was there, Rosie O'Donnell.
That is correct, and they both gave excellent speeches. And there is a candidates forum at the LGBT Center this Sunday, January 6th at 2 p.m. if you would like to hear all or most of these people speak. What happens, is this a straight plurality election?
So a Republican could win. Anybody could win. You just need, somebody could win with 10% of the vote.
But but they have to be reelected in the fall.
Yeah. But this is Bloomberg's revenge.
But it's
a long story.
The regular end of February someone gets elected.
February 26th.
But then there's a regular election at the beginning of November for a full term for the office.
I think that is true.
I know it's true because I read that.
And then there are runoffs. But we could. But whoever is in there, could be the next. I mean, the next mayor if de Blasio steps down. We're hopeful about what's going to happen in the New York State Senate. We're finally going to get some progressive legislation, and I'm very encouraged because the new Democratic majority would not let Simca Felder, the traitor, sit with them in their conference, and that's an encouraging sign.
It is. Can we go over some Supreme Court news?
Yes.
That was a reluctant yes.
I'll just have to find it.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a list, so I can start going through it. The Alliance Defending Freedom is asking the Supreme Court to rule in favor of a Hawaii bed and breakfast that refused a gay couple from being allowed to stay there. They say that the bed and breakfast should be allowed to practice the Mrs. Murphy rule, which says if your establishment is small enough, you can refuse people.
Well,
highly unlikely.
In housing law, two-family houses, for instance, are exempt from human rights laws.
Yes.
But that's it.
So the Supreme Court, in its conference this week, will decide whether or not to take that case. They will also decide whether to take 3 cases that have to do with whether the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act includes sexual orientation and gender identity.
Right.
Those are on the potential docket. Also, a week later, on the 11th, their conference will consider 4 trans military cases and whether the Trump administration gets to get an expedited ruling on those cases. So that's next week's decision by the Supreme Court. And then I think I've got one more. Also, later on, the Supreme Court will decide whether to take a couple of cases, the Oregon wedding cake case and the Pennsylvania trans high school student case. So all of those are coming up for consideration by the Supreme Court in the next month or two, and we will be getting some fast and furious announcements of whether or not the Supreme Court is going to take these cases.
Whether they're going to take it.
Yeah.
A couple of court decisions from around the country, federal courts. In Colorado, I guess this was there. No, Court of Appeals ruled that the Obergefell decision applies retroactively to determine whether a lesbian couple had a common law marriage. Their common law sort of association was pre the 2015 Obergefell decision, and the state said since it recognizes common law marriages that this one should be recognized as well retroactively.
The state is saying that.
Yes.
And the court is saying yes?
No. The Court of Appeals in the state is saying that. Okay? And then this one relates to religious freedom. In California, a federal court ruled that St. James Elementary School, Catholic school, violated a teacher's rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act. She had cancer, and they fired her because she was going to be getting treatments, and I guess they would pay for them or something. And the court said,
Most likely.
you don't get a blanket ministerial exemption to do anything you want with anybody just because you're a religious institution.
But that is what these religious people are saying. They're saying...
this has nothing to do with her teaching anything.
I couldn't agree with you more, but what the logical extension of all these Alliance Defending Freedom, Tony Perkins, Focus on the Family cases, is that these so-called religious institutions, and I would, we could debate how religious they are, that they have the right for absolutely separate existence in this country.
Sharia law.
By their own lights to do whatever they want.
Well,
and that they want a theocracy.
Yes.
They want to wipe out civil law, and they want to rule entirely on their own.
Religious groups like Catholic Church is not forced by the law to ordain women. That would be an infringement on their rights, even though it would be a nice thing for them to do. But that's the way it works. In Idaho, a federal judge ordered the Department of Corrections to pay for gender confirmation surgery for an incarcerated trans woman. Now, they cited the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. She had castrated herself, made a bloody mess, went to the hospital. So they said, this was so bad. In this case, we're not making it a blanket thing. Everybody's entitled to gender but they were even denying her hormones. So in this case, they have to deal with it.
Yeah, no, they don't want to supply anything. They don't believe in transgenderism. They don't believe that people can self-define. They believe that they have the right to define who people are and how they should be.
Well, except there was another case. Where was it? I'm not going to find it right away. Where
the trans woman was reassigned to the women's prison.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes, I want to say Texas, but that could be absolutely wrong.
I'll find it eventually.
Don't go by me.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go back to some better news. Who should show up on New Year's Eve at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, where the rebellion was kicked off 50 years ago, but Madonna.
She is. And she gave a big, long speech, which you can see online, about the significance of Stonewall and praising the community and blah, 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 and, and
on her left there is her adopted son, David Banda, 16 years old, who played guitar while she sang a couple of songs. She sang Like a Prayer, and she sang Can't Help Falling in Love, the old Elvis Presley song.
She urged us to share what we know with people we don't agree with.
She was named a Stonewall ambassador by the Stonewall Inn, and everybody was quite amazed.
On the other hand, Louis C.K. crawled out of his hole. As you all read, he mocked not just the Parkland kids, and I'm not even going to get into the crudest terms that he used.
Let's not glide over that too fast. He mocked the survivors of the Parkland massacre at the high school.
You think we should listen to you because you died?
Just because you were shot at?
And all you did is push some fat kid into the line of fire.
Yeah.
That's what you did. Well, that's all right. I didn't want to get into it, but there it is. It's disgusting.
I don't want him to get away with
that. Non-binary people and their chosen pronouns. It's what you call punching down.
In fact, that's exactly what Joy Behar called it today on The View.
Okay, I didn't even see it.
Good.
Great minds think alike.
Absolutely.
So, and speaking of, in New York, a cab driver was kicked out of fare because the guy was gay. Mm-hmm. And they gave him a 10-day suspension and a fine of $1,150. But it wasn't treated as a human rights violation by the Human Rights Commission. So it was only a sort of a agency thing. Whereas somebody who kicked out a black family wouldn't take them where they wanted to go. The agency gave them a $200 fine. The Human Rights Commission gave the guy a $25,000 fine for that.
$25,000. I mean, what price discrimination?
Well,
but
if you want to
that's a lot
stop
of
it,
money.
if you want to stop it.
Yeah, I hope it does. I hope they all stop it. In San Francisco, the Lesbian and Gay Freedom Band has been designated legally as the city's band. They came together in 1978 around the Anita Bryant stuff, and they've always been the San Francisco Gay Freedom Day marching band and traveling corps. Am I right? Reading that right? Something corps. And they bill themselves as the first out band. So now they're the official band of San Francisco. Congratulations.
In New York, in a little town called Watertown, the town justice there, John Hallett, resigned and agreed never to seek office again after his homophobic rant at a county attorney where he said, "You and Viggo Mortensen should get a hotel room and suck each other's," he used a word for penis, which was rather coarse, and he said other things. So the Commission on Judicial Conduct said homophobic remarks and anti-LGBTQ sentiments have no place in the lexicon of the courts or the vocabulary of a judge.
Oh, my God.
Tell that to Clarence Thomas.
What is wrong with these people? All right, I'm going to go back to better news. In Long Beach, California, the mayor, out gay Latino mayor, Robert Garcia, married his partner in a big public ceremony.
Matt Mendez. We have a picture.
Yeah.
This was on December 20th.
There they are.
700 guests.
Well, that's why I have the second picture, because the audience for this, the guest list for this, there it is. This is the wedding ceremony. It's huge. Look at all those people.
They met in 2008 in West Hollywood, and their biggest common activity is going to Comic-Con conventions together.
So Robert Garcia is the first out gay and Latino mayor of Long Beach, and shared his happiness with the entire city, I guess.
On the other hand, in Fresno, California, the Catholic diocese there suspended their LGBT ministry that had begun in 2015, saying it had evolved to, but they wouldn't say how, in a way that they wouldn't say what they objected to. They just said it had, gone beyond its bounds, and they're going to push courage, which is to get you to be an ex-gay.
Yeah. In Jacksonville, Florida, something we've seen before, but it aroused some controversy. When Navy ships come into port after months away at sea, they have this thing where the sailors vie to be the official first kiss
it's kind
on
of a
the
raffle,
dock.
I think.
Yes, and it may even be a fundraiser. I remember one in Hawaii years ago.
This is not the first.
No, but a gay sailor won the raffle, and so he and his boyfriend kissed on the dock and sort of recreated the Times Square photo at the end of World War II. Well, people at Jacksonville are losing their minds over this.
Well, they went after the station that showed this. I thought this was a family station, but somebody got really upset. Put that picture up again. Somebody got really upset and said, "White shoes after Labor Day?"
Well, that was the joke.
I know. That's funny, though.
It was funny, but it wasn't someone being upset.
I know. Well.
It was someone mocking those who were upset.
Well, I mean, in that John Waters movie, it certainly caused a lot of trouble.
All right. Well, we are not upset about what happened at the Rose Parade in Pasadena, California, where Louise Desser Siskel is the first bisexual, Jewish, glasses-wearing Rose Parade queen.
Hooray!
Now, she won it. She and a friend entered on a lark. You apply to become the Rose Queen, and there were like 1,400 applicants. And you go through a series of interviews, and they were just kind of doing it for fun. But she kept getting called back and called back and called back. And what the judges evidently liked was she's a high school senior. She's a science student. And
she's also a member of the debate team in the Judicial Committee at Sequoia High School in Pasadena.
And she's
researched breast cancer.
Well, and she is adamant about science education for kids. She's only like 17. And so they picked her to be the Rose Queen, and she was completely out about being bisexual and Jewish, and they picked her, and so there she was on the
first
Rose Queen. Yeah.
All right.
Congratulations, Louise.
I'd like to note the passing of Sister Wendy Beckett, who did all that art appreciation stuff.
Oh, okay.
Just because, she was a celibate woman who was unafraid to talk about sex in a very direct way. Although she did once say that the Mona Lisa might have been sneering at Da Vinci because she knew he was homosexual and didn't know anything about women, which is kind of an odd remark, but there it was.
That is odd. Also an odd remark on MSNBC, Mika Brzezinski on the Morning Joe show was mad at Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for parroting Trump's statements about Khashoggi being, all the Saudi Arabians didn't murder him. They deny it, so it's fine. So Mika, can I say this?
Yes.
Mika called Pompeo Trump's butt boy, and evoked a lot of anger and upset about that, so she apologized both immediately on Twitter, and then when that was next on the show, she looked us right in the eye and said that language was absolutely unacceptable.
But it's always hilarious when the New York Post or any of these right-wing or Fox accuses anybody of homophobia. How about that Kevin Spacey? He apparently must appear, he's being ordered to appear in the Nantucket court on Monday to enter a plea in the groping of a teenage boy in a bar in 2016, charge of felony indecent assault. He put out a crazy video, which you may have seen, and he says he's going to plead not guilty. He was last seen in Baltimore wearing a baseball cap that said retired since 2017. All right.
Moving on to international news. One of the big...
Let's also note that Amazon eliminated their ex-gay app from the store. From the App Store,
therapy.
Conversion therapy, as did Apple, and they're pushing Google to do the same.
All right. Anything else?
No. We didn't mention that Cory Booker came out as straight. He'd done it before, but in an interview leading up to his candidacy.
Do we buy it?
I'm heterosexual. Well, he said every candidate should run on their authentic self. If elected, he's 49, he would be the first unmarried president since 1884.
Okay.
Grover Cleveland, who got married while he was in the White House.
I don't care. In Cuba, they are considering a new constitution, and as originally written, it included a section for marriage equality for same-sex couples. So this has been up to a lot of public debate over the last months.
Yes, they had a consultation, and the evangelicals didn't like it.
And so, because the evangelicals didn't like it, it has now been removed from the proposed new constitution, although the government says it was just because there wasn't enough public support, which is nonsense. The LGBT activists say that it was because of religious fundamentalism, machismo, and patriarchy. Mariela Castro, the daughter of Raul and niece of Fidel, who has been this big supposed LGBT advocate over the years, which is not what the independent LGBT activists in Cuba say, says, it's all going to be fine because...
She's been saying that for 10 years.
There's going to be this new referendum on marriage within 2 years.
A referendum?
A referendum.
Great.
Yeah. Well, if there's no public support, how's that going to do at a referendum? So Cuba is now off the table, and same-sex marriage is off the table in Cuba.
Bad news from Jamaica, where Equality Jamaica's headquarters was engulfed in a fire on December 30th. There was no one on the site, a lot of damage, and there is an investigation underway.
And bad news from Chechnya. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe has put out its full report, and it details killings, attacks, brutal assaults by police, no food or water or medicine.
This is a violation of the Helsinki Agreement that the USSR agreed to in 1975.
all about gay men being rounded up and tortured and killed in Chechnya and forced to give names of other gay people.
Well, they have no confidence that Russia's going to do anything about this.
Of course
they
not.
say that, but
Yeah.
they say we're writing this report to help the people who are fleeing so that they can get asylum in other countries.
Good luck with that. And they detail the cases of some lesbians who have also been raped and killed in Chechnya.
Same-sex marriage got underway in Austria with the first of the year, and it is the 26th nation to give marriage equality.
In Singapore, a court has allowed 2 gay men to adopt a child carried by a surrogate for them. The son is now 5, but actually only one of the dads can be an official parent, but at least they allowed the son to be in the same-sex household and recognize one of the dads. But in Israel, the High Court of Justice has ordered the Interior Minister to put both dads of an adopted child on the child's birth certificate.
Good.
Yeah.
Canada has officially warned LGBTQ people about going to the Bahamas. But even the local activists agreed, hey, of course we got problems.
Right.
Who doesn't? But also in Canada, the High Court there denied accreditation to a Christian law school that bans students from having gay sex, Trinity Western University in British Columbia. The Supreme Court ruled that protecting LGBT students trumped religious freedom. Sorry about using that word.
Yeah, well, I wish they could do something about Brazil, where the new president, Bolsonaro, was sworn in. In addition to claiming he's going to get rid of socialism, he promised that he will protect children from gender ideology, which means any mention in their school curricula of sexual orientation or gender identity.
That was one of the big issues that he ran on.
Yes, he is a proud homophobe.
And he wants to get rid of gay marriage, and a lot of people were rushing to the altar right before his inauguration.
Yep.
But they do think the Supreme Court, as currently constituted, would still uphold it.
In Kenya, LGBT people in a major refugee camp have complained to the United Nations that they are being brutally attacked, including by the guards, by the other refugees in the camp,
including by people
and the
at
guards.
the UN High Commission for Refugees doing it to them. So I met with Peter Tatchell when I was in London. This is one of his big issues. And they have transferred a lot of these people to Nairobi to house them there. I mean, it's still a 14-year penalty for homosexuality sodomy rather over there. It's just a tough place.
Yeah. In Germany, the parliament has approved a third gender non-binary designation for intersex people.
In Costa Rica, the president, Carlos Alvarado, signed 4 directives protecting LGBT rights, cleaning up the code, and facilitating same-sex marriage.
I think I was sorry to see that the UK has said that they will not promote same-sex marriage and non-discrimination laws in the territories that they control.
Although Bermuda is appealing their marriage, being forced to do marriage to the Privy Council in the UK, and they're not expected to prevail at the Privy Council.
Bermuda,
yeah.
in opposing same-sex marriage. So when the Privy Council upholds same-sex marriage in Bermuda, that may become a model for other British territories.
They don't seem to want to impose it, but if a court in Bermuda said you got to do it, they're saying we're not going to overturn that.
In Thailand, the cabinet has endorsed a new partnership bill for same-sex couples. It includes adoption rights, but not government spousal benefits or taxes. So it's sort of a halfway measure.
In Japan, 10 same-sex couples are suing for marriage equality.
They're going to file that suit in February. Meanwhile, the opposition party in Japan is proposing legislation for same-sex marriage. But since they're the opposition party, I don't know how far that's going to get.
Did we do Montenegro?
We did not.
The government passed a draft law, it's an early stage, on life partnership for same-sex couples.
Yes. And did you see the pictures of Montenegro on that story?
Nope.
It looks so beautiful,
Oh.
Montenegro, on the Adriatic Sea between Bosnia and Serbia
Let's
and
go.
whatever. And nearby in Croatia, the parliament has banned same-sex couples as foster parents. Activists there are going to sue about that.
Back in the UK, did we talk about Ben Hunty?
We did not.
We don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's Hunte. He has been named the BBC's first LGBTQ news correspondent for them. He's done lots of LGBT programming, and
he's gay,
Yes.
and so now this becomes his beat. He also has a degree in neuroscience.
And he ran the first BBC TV program and digital service for children in Africa.
In India, there is going to be a new movie, a new Bollywood extravaganza that is going to be a lesbian love story. I can't wait for this. Will this be the foreign language Oscar next year?
I don't know.
It's going to be called How I Felt When I Saw That Girl, expected in release in early 2019.
I'll take you back to my trip to England, a little anecdote. I took a tour of Spencer House, a picture of it. This is where Diana's family used to live until 1926.
Diana Spencer.
Diana Spencer. And it's a lovely place. It's only open on Sundays. It was saved by the Rothschilds. The tour guide there wanted to impress us with the famous people who've had functions there. She listed Rupert Murdoch, Henry Kissinger, and Vladimir Putin. I said openly, is there anyone I haven't demonstrated against that you might have had here? It was really.
Was there any reaction
it was
to
like
that
a step.
statement?
Oh, she said, oh, you know, you're right about that, she said. I said, yes, come up with some other names. Please. Why would you feature these people and think we'd be impressed?
Because those are the people who can rent out the Spencer House for functions.
It's a nice place.
I'm sure, and I'm sure that renting it out is not cheap.
How about that Pope? He told child abusers to prepare for divine justice, which is another way of saying we're not going to deal with it now. He talks about crimes against children, and they never take responsibility for the crimes they commit against gay kids with their horror.
Oh, look, they don't take responsibility for the crimes they commit against children
and
either.
girls.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know.
This is all just, to the extent they even talk about any of it, it's all just a cover-up.
Yeah.
Lip service.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
All right.
Welcome to 2019. You know, we got a lot of nice notes from viewers at the end of the year.
Yes, thank you.
And my thank you notes, one of my new promises for 2019 is better news for 2019.
You've been the queen of good news this week.
Have I?
Yes.
Oh, you do the bad news and I've been doing the good news? Let's see if we can change that. AIDS news?
Well, this is not a happy story about UN AIDS. They're under fire as a predator's prey ground.
Playground.
Prey ground.
Oh, I take it back. I apologize.
Yeah, because senior staff members dating interns and using resources to access sex workers. The director, Michael Sidibe, has resigned over all this, but that was a very culture of impunity when it came to sex abuse. And this is the AIDS agency for the UN.
Well,
Terrible.
that, of course, makes it sad, but it also sounds like half the audience offices I worked in.
Oh, God.
In television.
But this is 2019 now.
Yeah, I'll throw in a bad news story. The Trump administration has put together a draft green paper, but what it does, in spite of that title, is give more power to the pharmaceutical industry. Which will raise drug prices, not lower them, and is giving up a lot of government power to, of course, the private, heavily profitable drug
Well,
companies.
yeah, I mean, there's a big Hep C warning out there. 14 HIV-negative men on PrEP have acquired sexually transmitted hepatitis C. Well, there is a treatment for that. It costs $84,000.
Yes.
Or you can go to India and pay $1,000 and have a vacation.
But the bottom line on that is that if you are having unprotected sex, even if you're on PrEP, you should be tested regularly for sexually transmitted infections.
And there are other reasons to have protected sex other than HIV.
Exactly.
That's the point.
Exactly. And the CDC has put out its figures for 2017. It takes a long time for these figures to be accumulated and published. 52% of new HIV diagnoses in this country, half plus of new HIV diagnoses, were in the South.
All top 9 cities for incidents are in the South.
The South has 1/3 of the United States total population, but 44% of all people living with HIV.
So at this point, infections there are stable, bad, but stable. They went down 17% in the Northeast and 6% in the Midwest.
Yeah. Oh, and we have really buried the lead. The Trump administration is going to restore the President's Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS.
What do we know about Carl Schmitt, who has been appointed as the co-chair?
He is a former log cabin official.
Oh.
Yeah, but he...
AIDS Advocacy is the name of the group? Or?
AIDS Institute,
Okay.
He runs, and he will be the co-chair of the President's Advisory Council with John Weissman, who is the Washington State Secretary of Health. The council was disbanded in 2017 by Trump, right as everybody quit. He said, no, you're fired. Because he had destroyed the national AIDS strategy, and LGBT people were literally erased from the White House website. What has turned this around, or why they think they have to now pay lip service to HIV?
We just gave you the
mystery.
2017 statistics that are complete. We don't have the 2018 yet.
Yeah. And there was the ruling in Texas about the Affordable Care Act being unconstitutional. Now, of course, it includes provisions that protect trans people's access to care.
Sure, LGBT people in general.
And pre-existing conditions, which is, of course, HIV. So that's not good news.
Nevertheless, there's a man turning 100 this spring. His name is Miguel. We don't know much more, but he's called the Lisbon patient, who was diagnosed. He's turning 100 with HIV in 2004, but had it for 25 years. He's now undetectable on his viral load. And he says he has lemon tea with honey every night before bed.
It's so funny. You hear these stories about, really old people.
Like the guy who drank whiskey and smoked cigars who lived to be 112?
17 cigars a day or something. That's the secret of a long life. Smoke 17 cigars a day. I don't think so. All right, can we move on to entertainment news? Well, I wanted to follow up with the Miss Universe pageant, because we told you that Spain had sent to the Miss Universe pageant a trans woman as their representative. She did not advance in the pageant. She was not a semifinalist. But what they did do was a whole feature piece on her. They had a lovely several-minute-long piece about her being an out trans woman. And at the end of the piece, she did a special runway walk up and down. Absolutely gorgeous, and total support and applause from the audience. So I thought that was a good outcome. Yeah. To have her featured like that on the broadcast was
And we'll see if this is
excellent.
progress. Darren Criss, the actor, has announced that he wants to make sure he won't be another straight boy taking a gay man's role. Now, of course, he famously was gay on Glee and in the assassination of Gianni Versace and some other things.
Yeah,
but he said
Hedwig. He played Hedwig on Broadway.
Says he doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. And he says he grew up in San Francisco theater, so he was essentially raised by gay men. And he feels it's just inappropriate for him to take those roles. They should be played by gay men. Now, I got a note from a viewer who was not happy that when we talked about LGBT people and content at the upcoming Grammy Awards on February 10th, I left out the most nominated person for Grammys with 6 nominations, Brandi Carlile, who's an out lesbian. I'm stupid. I didn't know about Brandi.
There she
She's
is.
on the right there with her wife on the left. She is the most nominated person. Party of One is...
There's a picture of her in action.
Yeah, looking great. She has two daughters, lives in Maple Valley, Washington, and is extremely popular. And now I know.
I saw the Mr. Rogers documentary finally, Won't You Be My Neighbor? I found it very moving, kind of an antidote to the Trump era. But in the course of it, the black guy, and I apologize for not having his name at my fingertips, who played the cop on the show, said, I was seen in a gay bar back in the early 70s, and they basically told me if I come out, that I'll be, the show would be canceled or something like that. So I stayed in the closet. He loved Mr. Rogers, but it was very, since Mr. Rogers is all about accepting everybody, at every level, it was just discouraging and sad that's the way they felt it had to be. Maybe it did.
Well, I'm sure it did, but you always have the choice. You can, presumably they were making the choice they thought was appropriate for the greater good.
They would lose funders.
Yeah, but at what point do you draw the line and say, well, not treating people like that is more important than funding?
I don't think that would happen today with a children's show.
No, certainly not.
But this was a long, long time ago.
It was, and it was a different era.
And this guy had a great love for Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. I am looking forward this Sunday to the Golden Globes, which should be fun.
Right. This Sunday.
This Sunday, January 6th. Yeah. And I saw the Kennedy Center honors. I taped it. I fast forwarded through parts of it.
Cast of Hamilton or something?
Yeah, they got some special honor, but the honorees were Cher and Reba McEntire and Philip Glass and Wayne Shorter. And it was actually kind of dull and not very exciting. That used to be a more exciting show. But I thought the person who stole the show was Adam Lambert, doing Cher's song, Do You Believe in Love, as a ballad. And he brought a lot of poignancy to it, and I thought was the one thing that stood out in the show as, worth seeing.
We mourn the loss of Hector Extravaganza, the grandfather of ballroom, a consultant on the show Pose and a Little Kim designer. He's died at the age of 60.
He was in Paris is Burning.
He's been on the ball scene since 1979,
Yep.
HIV positive since 1982, did a lot of AIDS fundraising, a lot of that early money, and he provided a lot of guidance for what they call the children and, of course, his grandchildren.
Yeah. I Am Jazz has now shown up on the Learning Channel, TLC, for season 5. Dealing this year finally with Jazz's gender confirmation surgery, going to an LGBT prom, and one of her friends, Noelle, was a Parkland student and was there for the shooting. So some of the first episode was about Noelle's PTSD about the Parkland shooting. Dr. Marcy Bowers is her surgeon, and so she's featured a lot in the show. So I Am Jazz remains fascinating on TLC. Go ahead. You want to do your London reviews?
Sure.
Go right ahead.
And I should have put up the website. You can go to gaycitynews.com and read my full reviews. But a lot of gay stuff over there in London, and a lot of it is coming here. And some of it you can see also in cinemas around the world on something called NT Live, National Theatre Live. I'll mention the ones that are doing that. But the big gay play, and it's not on NT Live because I think it's going to be coming to New York, is by an American Latinx guy from the Deep South who wrote this gay play based on E.M. Forster's Howard's End about contemporary gay men in New York. And it's a 2-part play, Shades of Angels in America.
So they took a perfectly good E.M. Forster book and movie and TV series and made it gay.
And made, E.M. Forster, of course, is gay, and he is a character in the play advising these men how to tell their story. We have pictures from the show there.
Weird.
Telling you the intricacies of the plot is very, very difficult. But it's meant to be sort of an intergenerational story, pay tribute to what happened before, talking about what happened now. it was certainly fascinating. And the second picture, of course, Vanessa Redgrave comes on as a character at the very end of the show there as a mom who had lost a son to AIDS. AIDS plays a large role in this. I think it could be condensed to one play, if I may say so, or it might make a nice mini-series. But it is such a big hit over there, that it's
So it's coming here?
I think it has to. Tom Curtihy is one of the producers. In fact, the producers of the West End production are all Broadway producers. So yes, I'm sure they're preparing it to come here.
Okay.
All right. I think they're going to decide whether to put it into a big theater or a small theater. Then I saw my favorite actor, Simon Russell Beale, in The Tragedy of Richard II. I've never seen, they did the whole show in an hour and 40 minutes. That's him with the crown on. Of course, that makes a big difference. It was very, very stripped down. It didn't get such great reviews, but I was intrigued by the interpretation.
Okay.
And then it was great to see Antony and Cleopatra with Ralph Fiennes and Sophie Oquendo. My God, real star power. But I had never. Have you seen this play?
I don't think I have.
I have never seen this play.
I think I read it in high school or something.
I mean, it's always, it's a big story about middle-aged love. Now, of course, they're both rulers. He from Rome, she from Egypt. But they acted like just these ridiculously jealous, petty people. And so there was hardly any nobility in it. But they sure do the poetry well. And then another show that's coming here in March, Hadestown. Now, Hadestown, there's Andre de Shields at the center of it.
We love Andre.
He's at the center of it. He's the narrator. Hadestown is based on Orpheus and Eurydice. And it's a modern, not a modern telling, but maybe it takes place in like...
Is Andre going to be here with that play?
I would hope so. This started at the New York Theater Workshop, and I skipped it. And now they've given it this sumptuous production on the big stage at the National Theater, and it's I enjoyed it. I mean, it's folk music, it's jazz music. Patrick Page plays Hades, the devil, and that voice, I can't do it. It's so deep and strong.
I think you got close.
No. He's unbelievable. So it's a great cast, great show. Hadestown. Then, actually, I think this was my favorite production. Mark Ravenhill is an out gay, out HIV positive playwright. He shocked the world with Shopping and Effing 20 years ago. And we haven't heard a tremendous amount from him. He wrote this play called The Cane. So it's about a retiring teacher there in the center, Alan Armstrong, who he caned people at his school 30 years ago when it was legal. And kids found out about it, and they're all outside the house demonstrating against him. He's there with his long-suffering wife there on the left, and his daughter, Nicola Walker, who has been estranged for 20 years and shows up to help out Dad get through this crisis. Or is she getting him through this crisis?
Is he currently caning or past caning?
They found out that he did it when it was legal in 1980 up until 1986.
I see.
So it's like, and then of course, it was an hour and 45 minutes, no intermission or interval as they call it there. And I thought it was just taut and fascinating. And it's all about how do you apply the standards of, today to yesterday and all this stuff.
And is that going to show up on NT Live or?
I don't know, not that one, but it was at the Royal Court Theater.
Okay.
And then The Telltale Heart, you know that, the Edgar Allan Poe story.
Edgar Allan Poe, absolutely.
So this guy, Anthony Nielsen, the other bad boy of theater, so the woman on the left there is Tamara Lawrence, a very prominent actress. She's, by the way, before I even tell you about Telltale Heart, she's in a thing that you're going to see on PBS called The Long Song. And it's about the transition from slavery to freedom in Jamaica. Not really freedom, what really happened in 1831. There was a revolt there. I saw that while I was there, the 3-part series on the BBC. It's got to come here, it's tremendous. The Telltale Heart was, which is supposed to be about somebody who kills their landlord, puts them under the floorboards and keeps hearing the heart. Right. In this case, it's this woman, Imogen Dole, who's wearing this eye patch, and what happens when she takes it off. I just thought it was silly, I have to say. I got a little sick of it.
You're allowed to say that.
And then I saw Company. So Company, Stephen Sondheim, Marianne Elliott, who did Angels in America, got permission to put a woman in the role of Bobby, the central role.
You have 10 seconds.
All right. And Patti LuPone is in it, and that's a great reason to see it. And there's a gay couple in it, and I think that's the other great reason to see it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we will see you next week.